Chapter 126. She prefers mint flavor. This time, Chu Zhimiao didn't need to be called. The moment she saw the group of survivors, she approached them. Noticing the bruises and red marks on the women's bodies, she averted her gaze and said, "You can follow me for the inspection." The women knew that others would look down on them because of the humiliation they had experienced. So, some lowered their heads in shame. But those who had fought against the zombies or lost their loved ones refused to bow. With their heads held high, they followed Chu Zhimiao into the metal partition room. Inside the camp, Zhang Yuan reported to Jin Zuyan, "Captain, the Eagle team has arrived. Here is the list of supplies we have prepared for them." Jin Zuyan checked the list and said, "Reduce the amount of instant noodles and staple food. We found rice and coarse grains at the seed factory. Tomorrow, we will go with the Eagle team to collect the supplies." Zhang Yuan nodded and replied, "Understood. Old Zhang, inform our brothers that we will hold a meeting in an hour. Besides those assigned to guard the perimeter, all team members must attend," Jin Zuyan instructed, handing the list back to Zhang Yuan. "Yes, Captain." After Zhang Yuan leaves, Jin Zuyan turns to Zhao Lijai and says, "Aitg, I will be busy later. If you are tired, you can rest first." Zhao Lijai nodded and said, "Let's go to the temporary bathroom first. You should clean up the blood before meeting your guests." Jin Zuyan agreed, and the two headed to the public bathhouse built by the Wen brothers. When they arrived, they saw a line of people waiting for their turn outside the bathhouse. A soldier guarding the area noticed them and walked over and said, "Welcome back, Captain, sister-in-law. There are women using the bathhouse now, so my sister-in-law can go in first," he added. Zhao Lijai nodded and said, "Okay, I will refill the water too." "Thank you, sister-in-law." While waiting for his turn, Jin Zuyan took a pack of cigarettes out of his pocket, but before he could light one, he hesitated. After a while, he put the cigarette back into the pack and handed it to a soldier. "Take it." The soldier knew his captain was a heavy smoker. For him to suddenly give up smoking, something must have happened. He hesitated before asking, "Captain, why are you giving this to me? Aren't you going to smoke?" "I won't smoke anymore," Jin Zuyan replied while popping a piece of mint candy into his mouth. Curious, the soldier asked, "Why?" Jin Zuyan glanced at him and replied as a matter of factly, "Your sister-in-law dislikes the smell of cigarettes. She prefers mint flavor." The moment he heard his captain's bragging words, the soldier's face twisted in dismay. He glanced at his captain with silent complaints in his heart. If he had known he was about to be force-fed dog food, he would never have asked. Seeing his soldier's envious and sour expression, the corner of Jin Zuyan's lips lifted. Inside the public bathhouse, Zhao Lijai was unaware that a certain someone was spreading rumors about her preferences. At this moment, she worked diligently, like a busy bee. Since the water in the bathtub was no longer clean enough for washing up, she drained it by heating the dirty water until it turned into vapor, leaving an empty bathtub. When the women saw her throwing away so much water, they felt a pang of regret, such a waste. But before they could complain, they saw her create several balls of water and refill the bathtub. This time, she not only filled it to the brim but also said, "Those who brought basins or containers, get in line, I will help you fill them." The moment they heard this, everyone cheered and quickly formed a line. Zhao Lijai wanted to use this opportunity to drain her energy and push the limits of her energy pool. So, she was generous, filling their containers to the brim, and even lending a large basin for them to wash their clothes and underwear. Once she finished, she quickly took a shower and took a seat of clean clothes from her space when no one was looking. After she had changed her clothes, she walked to the washing area. Seeing that she wanted to wash her dirty clothes, one of the women stepped forward and said, "Sister, you must be tired after filling so many containers. Let us help you wash them." Zhao Lijai didn't refuse and replied with a smile, "Thank you." While they washed her clothes, she walked out of the bathhouse and saw the nearby soldier. She waved at Xirokai to come over. "Sister-in-law, do you need something?" Xirokai asked. Zhao Lijai nodded and said, "Xirokai, tell the survivors to bring their empty containers. I will help them fill the water container. Also, ask your comrades to make several big basins so people can wash their clothes. Even if we need to be frugal with water and food, we still need to be careful with hygiene. If people get sick, it will be troublesome to find the medicine," she added. Xirokai nodded and said, "I will inform Brother Wen and the survivors." "Okay." Not long after, the Wen brothers arrived and created 3 large basins. After they had created the basins, the 2 of them left to join the meeting. Zhao Lijai filled them to the brim with water. Once she was done, she saw Xirokai approaching with a group of survivors, mostly women and young men. Seeing them, she said, "Everyone, although we don't have soap or detergent, you can wash your clothes with this water." Hearing her words, one of the survivors asked, "Sister, why don't you give this water to us for drinking instead?" Zhao Lijai looked at the survivor and said, "Even though drinking water is important, hygiene is just as crucial. If you fall ill, it will be hard to get medicine." Chapter 127, Staying or Leaving. She glanced at everyone and continued, "As you all know, hospitals are always packed, even during holidays. Now they are one of the most dangerous places, filled with zombies. Not to mention us, even strong ability users might not be able to get medicine from a hospital, so rather than getting sick, it's better to prevent illness in the first place." Hearing her reasoning, the survivors found it logical and nodded in agreement. "But sister, we are short on drinking water. Is it really okay to use so much for washing clothes?" a young man asked. "Brother, don't worry. Before you leave with the soldiers, I will make sure to fill up everyone's water containers. That way you will have your own supply, in addition to what the soldiers provide," Zhao Lijai assured him. Hearing her promise, everyone finally felt at ease. Since arriving at the camp, they had seen how the soldiers prepared meals and drinking water for them. Although they didn't know where the supplies were stored, they had witnessed one of the soldiers creating water out of thin air and using it for their drinking water. While everyone was either bathing or washing clothes, Jin Zuyan and his team were meeting with the Eagle team. Instead of asking Wen Mo and Wen Kai to create a metal partition, Zhang Yuan and Zhou Huajian used their wood and earth-type abilities to construct a simple room, 20 square meters in size. In the center of the room stood a wooden table with several wooden chairs. Jin Zuyan, Zhang Yuan, and Wei Wying sat around the table, while the rest of their team stood behind them. Zhang Yuan handed a supplies list to Wei Wying and said, "Captain Wei, this is the list of supplies we have prepared for your team and the survivors. For now, we don't have any medicine, so we will have to ask you to find some on your way back to the camp." Wei Wying scanned the list, then frowned. He put down the list and asked, "Old Zhang, the supplies on your list are only enough to last us 2 weeks. At this, Zhang Yuan glanced at his captain but remained silent. Noticing this, Wei Wying turned to Jin Zuyan and asked, "Did you promise me a month's worth of supplies? Are you going back on your word now?" Jin Zuyan tapped his finger on the table and replied, "Wei Wying, I found rice and coarse grains at the seed factory today, enough for us to divide. I plan to take you and your team to collect the supplies tomorrow. But if you'd prefer instant noodles or ready meals instead of rice and grains, I can arrange that for you," he added with a smile. Hearing this, the Eagle team's eyes lit up. If they could have rice and grains, why would they settle for instant noodles? Wei Wying considered it for a moment before asking, "How much did you find?" Jin Zuyan and Zhao Lijai hadn't checked the rest of the warehouse district, but based on the survivors' reactions and the size of the warehouse buildings, he was sure the amount wasn't small. "It should be enough for your team and the survivors to last at least half a year," he replied casually. Wei Wying was excited but kept a calm expression. After a brief silence, he said, "All right. My team will go with yours tomorrow." Jin Zuyan nodded and said, "Then prepare your team and trucks first. If you need anything, just ask my team members. They will arrange it for you." "Okay." Wei Wying stood up, and since they had reached an agreement, he and his team left the room. Once they were gone, Jin Zuyan looked at his team and said, "I believe by now, everyone has realized that I have no intention of returning to the military. I have decided to retire. Some of you may think this decision is absurd given the current chaos. After tomorrow's trip to the seed factory, we will part ways with the Eagle team. Those who wish to remain soldiers can go with Wei Wying. I won't stop you." The soldiers were taken aback when they heard his words. Raising his hand to stop them from talking, Jin Zuyan continued, "For those who choose to stay with me, you are welcome to stay. But from now on, we will establish our own rules and no longer follow military regulations." At this, Gao Bohai raised his hand and asked, "Captain, what's your plan?" Jin Zuyan met his gaze and replied, "When our brothers sacrificed their lives for us to escape, I promised to find and protect their families in their place. So I will be traveling to their hometowns to locate their families." "Captain, do you have any plans to build a base?" Shen Jinj asked. Jin Zuyin shook his head and said, "For now, my priority is fulfilling my promise to our fallen brothers, so I don't plan on settling in one place. Instead, I want to establish a mercenary team. In the future, we will take on missions to earn rewards." After hearing his plan for the future, some of the soldiers hesitated, but no one voiced their thoughts yet. Noticing this, Jin Zuyin added, "If you follow me, you will be risking your life with no guarantees of enough supplies or stable life. So think carefully before making your decision." As soon as he finished speaking, Qin Luzi stepped forward and said without hesitation, "Captain, I will follow you." One by one, the Wen brothers Zhang Yuan, Gao Bohai, Shen Jinj, Chen Kai and Feng, Zhou Huajian, Li Sikai, Ziro Kai, Feng Yun, and Yin Yusheng followed suit. They looked at him and said in unison, "Captain, we will follow you." Jin Zuyin saw their determination and nodded with a smile, "Good." Then he turned to the others and asked, "What about the rest of you? It's okay if you choose to join Wei Wying. Everyone is free to make their own decision. I won't force you, and you don't need to feel guilty if you decide to leave." Chapter 128, Walking on a Different Path. After a long silence, one ability user finally stepped forward and said, "Captain, it wasn't easy for me to get into the special forces. I don't want to retire." Jin Zuyin nodded and said, "I understand. Thank you for your service all these years. Before you leave, I will divide some supplies and crystal cores for you." Hearing this, the rest of those who wanted to leave finally spoke up. Most were unwilling to retire after working so hard to join the special forces. While Ziro Kai and the others felt upset, seeing them as traitors, Jin Zuyin had no objections. He would rather they leave than follow him unwillingly. Once their decisions were made, Jin Zuyin stood up and saluted them. The soldiers returned his salute. Lowering his hand, he said, "Brothers, I wish you all a bright future and safety." Meeting adjourned. With that, he turned and left the room. Watching his firm steps as he left, those who chose to leave lowered their heads. Most had only been in the Phantom team for a year or two, and though their attachment wasn't deep, they had received their captain's care and even owed him their lives. Now that they were leaving, guilt weighed heavily on them. Noticing this, Zhang Yuan turned to them and said, "Raise your heads and stand tall." The soldiers obeyed, despite looking at him with teary eyes. Zhang Yuan let out a long sigh before he said, "Brothers, from today onward, the duty of protecting our country falls on your shoulders. Since you have made your choice, walk your path with confidence. Captain and us don't blame you, he understands your concerns. Don't burden yourselves with guilt. We regret that we won't be able to watch your backs and fight alongside you anymore, but we wish you all a safe and sound future. Those leaving, pack your belongings and report to the Eagle team. Those staying, remain here." The soldiers who chose to leave saluted him before walking out, one by one. Now, only 12 people remain in the room. 15 had left, including 4 ability users. Noticing the heavy mood, Zhang Yuan smiled and asked, "Why do you all look like you lost $1 million?" Ziro Kai frowned and said, "Vice Captain, aren't you angry? After everything we have been through together, they just left." Zhang Yuan patted his shoulder and said, "Ziro Kai, throughout life, many people will only stay for a moment, guests passing through your life. If you get angry every time someone leaves, won't you wear yourself out? I understand how you feel, but in the end, everyone has the right to choose their own path. Just because we think differently doesn't mean their decision is wrong. You are still young, you will understand more in time," he added patiently. Seeing that everyone had calmed down, he continued, "I asked you all to stay because we will be heading to the seed factory with the captain to collect supplies. Today, the captain and sister-in-law found rice and coarse grains there. From the information he gathered, the amount is significant. For now, Li Sikai will temporarily lead the camp. Wenmo, Wenkai, and Yin Yusheng will stay behind to help. With our team members and some from the Eagle team, the survivors won't dare cause trouble. The rest of you will go with the captain. Tonight, get some rest. We leave at first light." Everyone nodded and replied in unison, "Understood." After the soldiers left the room, a young woman walked over and asked, "Brother, can you let me sleep in that room for a night? My stomach is in pain, and I can't sleep outside." When she walked closer, Qin Luzi smelled the thick scent of blood coming from her. He frowned and checked the map in his mind. Seeing the white dot, he frowned and asked, "Are you injured?" The woman was stunned by his words for a while before she realized something. In an instant, her face turned red, and she stammered, "No, I'm not injured." "Then why is the scent of blood around you so heavy?" Qin Luzi asked again. As a straight man who spent most of his life studying in military school and then lived in the wilderness during missions, he had no idea about women's matters at all. Seeing that he had no clue what was happening, the woman hesitated for a long time, but was still unable to tell a stranger about her period. When she was contemplating whether to just forget about it, Zhao Lijai saw them and walked over. The moment she smelled the blood and saw how the woman pressed her lower abdomen, she understood immediately. She stood beside her and asked in a low voice, "Sister, do you use that?" The woman shook her head and replied in a low voice, "I forgot to bring any with me." Hearing this, Zhao Lijai said, "I have some, come with me." "Thank you, sister," the woman said gratefully. Qin Luzi was confused when he saw the young woman suddenly following his sister-in-law after they whispered for a moment. Since he couldn't understand, he just put it at the back of his mind. Meanwhile, Jin Zuyin saw his Aitg bring a woman to her car and followed them. When he saw her rummaging through her backpack and taking out a piece of clean underwear, a strip of pain relief medicine and 2 packs of sanitary pads, he decided not to go over. "Sister, remember to wash the blood off properly. Zombies have a very keen sense of smell. If the scent is too strong, it will attract them," Zhao Lijai said as she handed the items to the woman. Accepting the items, the woman nodded and said, "Thank you, sister." Using her backpack as cover, Zhao Lijai took out 2 sachets of brown sugar ginger soup. This instant drink was convenient to have. They only needed to mix it with hot water to drink it directly. She used a paper cup to prepare the brown sugar ginger soup for the woman and said, "Drink this and then go rest. You can go to the new room, it's less windy there." This time the woman accepted the hot soup with reddened eyes. Not to mention the apocalypse, even in normal times, not many people were as generous as this girl. After thanking her one last time, the young woman went to find a place to change her underwear and rest. Chapter 129, Zombies Horde. Not long after the woman left, Jin Zuyin walked over to Zhao Lijai's car and said, "Aitg, I have some women's products for you in my backpack." Zhao Lijai had already noticed his footsteps and asked, "What things?" "Go have a look and you will know," Jin Zuyin replied mysteriously. Feeling curious, Zhao Lijai grabbed Jin Zuyin's backpack and opened it. The moment she saw those products, her face turned red. She turned to look at him and asked, "Why are you getting these?" "Since I came to find you, I had to prepare for an emergency. I don't know what brand you use, so I took some of each. If you need more, we can go to the supermarket and get them," Jin Zuyin said. Zhao Lijai was speechless at his matter-of-fact tone and checked the underwear. When she saw the size was perfect for her, doubts flashed in her mind. In their past lives, they had never interacted, so how did he know her size? Seeing that she only looked at the items but didn't collect them into her space, Jin Zuyin asked, "Aitg, what's wrong?" Hearing his voice, Zhao Lijai snapped back to her senses. Feeling embarrassed, she quickly stored the items in her space. Then, thinking about the danger they might face, she took out 5 bottles of pond water from her space and put them into his backpack. Jin Zuyin noticed this, smiled, but said nothing. His Aitg always worried that he wouldn't have enough water to drink. As the guards and survivors rested for the night, inside several factories, the people hiding in the dormitories noticed that the number of zombies had been reduced by more than half. It had been a few days since they heard the commotion outside the dormitories, and they had thought that the soldiers would come to rescue them. But until now, no one had ever come. Fear, desperation, and anxiety filled their hearts as they huddled together in their rooms. Some of them, who no longer had any food or water, finally decided to leave at sunrise. The night was long, but it eventually passed. When the sun rose and the red moon set, the survivors came out of their small rooms one after another. Before leaving, they gathered everything that could be used as a weapon and left the buildings. Thanks to Jin Zuyin's team, most of the zombies had been cleared, and they only encountered some wandering zombies. But even though they outnumbered the zombies, the moment the survivors saw the zombies, they screamed and ran away instead of fighting. Due to their screams, more and more zombies were attracted to their location. Similar situations occurred in several factories visited by Jin Zuyin's team. Only those factories in the distance, still full of zombies, remained unaffected. When the sun rose higher, Qin Luzi suddenly opened his eyes and stood up on high alert. The moment he saw the dense clusters of red dots and white dots, mixed with a few green dots, his expression turned solemn and cold sweat broke on his back. Zyro Kai, who had just finished washing his face, saw his strange reaction and asked, "Brother Lucy, what's wrong?" After confirming that the number of zombies heading their way was several times greater than before, he said, "Zyro Kai, go inform the captain. A zombie horde is coming our way. The number might be more than several thousands." The moment he heard this, Zyro Kai's smile vanished instantly. He quickly ran toward Jin Zuyan's tent. While Zyro Kai went to inform his captain, Chin Luzi woke his brothers and said, "Everyone, a zombie horde is coming. Wake the survivors and evacuate them as soon as possible." As soon as the soldiers heard his words, their drowsiness disappeared instantly. At this moment, Zyro Kai had already woken up Jin Zuyan and said, "Captain, a zombie horde is coming." Awakened by his shout, Jin Zuyan ordered calmly as he put on his clothes, "Inform the Eagle team and ask them to evacuate the survivors. Those who decide to leave, go with them to protect the survivors." "Captain, what about the supplies?" Zyro Kai asked again. "Go find Feng Yun and give the supplies to the Eagle team." After saying this, Jin Zuyan went to find Zhao Lizhai. Zyro Kai didn't waste time and quickly went about his task. When he found Feng Yun, he had already taken out 4 military trucks and filled them with a variety of supplies. Seeing this, Zyro Kai said, "Feng Yun, come with me." The two of them went to the survivors' resting area and saw Wei Wying and his team organizing the survivors to board the bus. "Don't push, get inside faster," one of the soldiers shouted as he shoved the survivors' belongings into the bus's trunk. The survivors were confused and annoyed at being woken up so early and forced onto the bus without explanation. Seeing the soldiers carelessly throwing their belongings into the trunk, one of them said, "Hey, be careful. If you break my things, I will ask you for compensation." When the soldier heard this, he replied, "There's a horde of zombies coming, and you still want to argue. If you want to die, step aside and don't block other people's way." At first, the survivors didn't believe the soldier's words, but the moment they heard the roars of zombies mixed with the screams of people in the distance, their faces turned pale as they realized the soldier was telling the truth. Out of fear, they began pushing each other, desperately trying to board the bus first. Seeing this, the soldier panicked and said, "Stop pushing. The more you push, the slower you are." Perhaps fear made them more obedient. After hearing the soldier's words, they stopped pushing and their speed increased. Even after the seats were full, the soldiers kept telling them to make room so the rest of the survivors could get inside. Chapter 130, Trump Card 1. Being pushed and squeezed, the survivors didn't dare to complain and could only resign themselves to their fate of being packed like sardines. The moment the bus could no longer hold any more people, the soldier climbed into the driver's seat and drove away. In front of them, several buses and trucks were already on the move. Some soldiers sat on the bus's rooftops, their guns and rifles ready to shoot at the zombies. While the soldiers evacuated the survivors, Zyro Kai found Wei Wying, pointed at the military trucks and said, "Captain Wei, you can take those supplies." Wei Wying followed Zyro Kai's direction, saw 4 military trucks full of supplies and said, "Thank you." Zyro Kai saluted and said, "Captain Wei, we will leave the survivors to you." Knowing this might be the last time they met, Wei Wying returned the salute and said, "Stay alive." Afterward he turned and walked away. After ordering his soldiers to drive the military trucks away, he went to find Pei Yijun and his team. When he saw them preparing for battle, he said, "Young Master Pei, you are coming with us." Hearing this, Pei Yijun said, "I will stay and block the zombies." Seeing his stubborn gaze, Wei Wying didn't have time to argue. With a swift motion, he struck the back of Pei Yijun's neck. The next moment, Pei Yijun rolled his eyes and collapsed. Seeing this, Han Jai asked, "What are you doing?" Wei Wying hoisted the unconscious Pei Yijun onto his shoulder and said, "If you want to live, follow me. If you stay, you will die." Leaving those words behind, he walked toward his car. Han Jai hesitated for a moment before following him. As for Li Yang and Chu Zhimiao, they looked at each other, then at the phantom team. After a moment of hesitation, Li Yang grabbed his childhood friend's wrist and said, "Let's go." Being pulled along by a strength-type ability user, Chu Zhimiao could only follow behind him. As she walked, she glanced back at Shen Jinj, worry clear in her eyes. Before she was pushed into Li Yang's jeep, her gaze met Shen Jinj's calm gaze. The next moment, the car sped away, and all she could hear were the roars of zombies and the screams of people running frantically. When she turned her head, she was no longer able to see anything. While the Eagle team led the survivors to evacuate, the Phantom team was preparing for battle. At this moment, besides Zhao Lijai and Jin Zuyan, there were only 12 people in their team. Check your ammunition and guns. If you are wounded, run out of energy or stamina, retreat and rest, Jin Zuyan said as he looked at his team. Zhao Lijai carried her backpacks over, handed 2 bottles of pond water to each of them, and said, "Drink this when you are tired." After distributing the water, she used her backpack as cover and took out the transparent crystal cores from her space. At this moment, she didn't have time to count the number of crystals. She gave a handful to each of them and said, "Absorb the energy from the crystals to recover if you run out of energy." The soldiers pocketed the crystal cores and water. Just after they finished distributing the supplies, they heard the screams getting closer. "Ak, help, please save me. Zra. Stop pushing, Ark." Seeing the chaotic situation, Jin Zuyan said, "Build a wall." As soon as they heard his words, Wen Kai and Wen Mo clasped their hands together before spreading them apart. In less than a few seconds, a 3-meter metal wall appeared in front of them, blocking the road. When the survivors saw this, their eyes filled with despair as they continued shouting and cursing. "No, save me. Why are you blocking the road? Open it." Ark. Zra. The sound of people cursing, begging and screaming mixed with the roars of zombies. At this moment, Jin Zuyan couldn't take the risk of letting the people pass. They didn't know if any were infected. So he jumped to the top of the wall and said, "When you reach the wall, stay put." The moment the soldiers saw him going up, they followed after him. Seeing that they were a group of people wearing soldier uniforms, hope ignited in the survivors' eyes. Since they had no other choice, they could only listen to the soldiers. When the survivors were 5 meters away from the wall, Zhou Huajian opened his palms, and 2 vines shot out. Crack, boom! With a swing of his hands, the vines made a loud cracking sound and rushed toward the zombie crowd. When the survivors saw the incoming vines, they covered their heads and squatted down. When they felt cold, stinking blood splash onto their backs, they didn't dare to turn around and kept running. Moving swiftly like snakes, Zhou Huajian's vines whipped the zombies back while crushing several heads in the front line. His attacks create distance between zombies and survivors, allowing them to reach the wall safely. The moment they reached the wall, the Wen brothers created another 2-meter metal barrier to block the zombies' advance. Trapped in between, the survivors let out a sigh of relief with pale faces. "Old Qin, check the survivors' condition and kill those who are mutating," Jin Zuyan said and jumped to the front wall. "Yes, Captain." Taking his order, Qin Luzi checked the map in his mind. With the wall separating the survivors and zombies, he could see some of the white dots flickering to red. Pulling out his dagger, he jumped down from the wall and rushed toward the red dots. Zra! One of the wounded turned into a zombie and pounced on the nearest person, biting her neck. "Axe, help!" Seeing some of them turning into zombies, the survivors panicked and screamed as they ran for their lives. Qin Luzi frowned at the noise but said nothing. Stab. Chapter 131, Trump Cards 2. Qin Luzi's dagger pierced the zombie's skull in one swift movement before it could bite a young woman. As he pulled out the blade, he turned and kicked another zombie beside him. Crack! The zombie's neck snapped from his roundhouse kick, and it fell to the ground with a loud thud. Zra! Another zombie lunged at the young woman with its mouth wide open. Seeing this, her knees gave out and she fell to the ground. With fear filling her heart, she squeezed her eyes shut as she screamed, "Ah, save me." Crash! When she thought she was dead, black blood splattered across her face. Feeling the sticky liquid, she opened her eyes and saw a pair of military boots in front of her. Looking down at the woman, Qin Luzi said with annoyance clear in his eyes, "Shut up if you want to live." Before finishing his words, he was already moving again, stabbing another zombie in the temple. The survivors, watching him kill the zombies, quickly scrambled to another direction. Meanwhile, the rest of the Phantom team was busy harvesting the zombies' heads. Standing atop the wall, they unleashed their abilities. Amidst the colorful attacks, Xirokai stood beside Feng Yun and said, "Look at them, flashy but not so effective. Today, brother will teach you how to kill fast and accurately." Feng Yun raised an eyebrow when he heard his words. As a space-type ability user, he lacked offensive skills, so he was curious to see what Xirokai meant. Crash, boom! The next moment, a massive boulder materialized out of nowhere and smashed the zombies. His eyes widened as he watched Zyro-Kai repeatedly summon and withdraw the massive rock into his space. While the attack wasn't flashy, it was brutally effective, just as he said. One move wiped out entire groups of zombies, turning them into mincemeat paste. Seeing Feng Yun's astonished expression, Zyro-Kai smirked and said, "How's that? We space-type ability users have the best AoE skills, so don't feel ashamed and puff up your chest." Feng Yun nodded, giving him a thumbs up while saying, "Amazing." Satisfied with the praise, Zyro-Kai continued his attack, using the zombies to play whack-a-mole game. Watching Zyro-Kai kill zombies using the boulder, an idea formed in Feng Yun's mind. Since his space ability functions similarly to a space portal, could he create a space blade or space crack? Looking at the horde below, he thought, with so many test subjects, I should be able to test my theory. Channeling his energy into his forefinger and middle finger, he felt the space in his mind fluctuate as it slowly connected to his surroundings. Flicking his wrist, he sent the energy downward. He had no expectations, but what happened next stunned him. Wayumum crash splash. A space tear appeared for a split second. Before he could process what was happening, a group of zombies stretched like spaghetti before being torn apart into small chunks. No one saw what happened in that brief moment, only that a group of zombies suddenly exploded. Black blood and rotten matter rained down, covering the ground. Zyro-Kai, standing beside Feng Yun, jumped and exclaimed, "What the hell was that?" Despite his shock, Feng Yun stared at his fingertips in disbelief. Just now, he felt his space energy stir and flow out of his body as the crack appeared. It had only lasted a moment, but he had seen it. The tiny crack, no bigger than a soybean, pulled surrounding zombies into it. They had stretched grotesquely before bursting. Testing his theory again, he concentrated and flicked his wrist. Waumm. Crash splash. This time, the space crack was marble-sized and lasted for 2 seconds. A powerful suction force erupted in the center of the zombie horde and tore the zombies into pieces. Jin Zuyan's eyes flickered as he watched part of his black flame also being pulled away by the suction force. Turning his head, he saw Feng Yun kneeling on the wall with a pale face. Due to the increased size of the space crack, Feng Yun's energy was almost completely drained. Feeling the severe headache and pain in his body, the corner of his lips lifted. Watching an entire section of the horde reduced to a rain of black blood, he was ecstatic. If he had more energy, his skill could destroy a city. Using this attack skill, he noticed that while his ability energy was nearly depleted, the other type of energy he used to store or retrieve items from his space remained untouched. This discovery made him realize that space-type ability users might be fundamentally different from others. While he was lost in his thoughts, the Wen brothers glanced at the bent metal wall, then at Feng Yun. Although they said nothing, they all noted this moment. None of them had expected a space-type ability to be so terrifying. With one move, Feng Yun killed hundreds of zombies. If he continued to hone this skill, he could become the strongest ability user in the future. While everyone was shocked, Zhao Lijai only spared him a glance. In her past life, Feng Yun had been a level 4 ability user yet could fight those stronger than him. She had thought his space blade was his trump card. Turns out his real trump card was this. No wonder he was able to destroy a zombie den by himself. Zyro-Kai noticed Feng Yun's condition and said, "Brother, why are you smiling like a pervert? Quickly absorb the energy from the crystal and recover your energy. There are still a lot of zombies coming." Hearing his words, Feng Yun regained his senses and took out a transparent crystal core from his pocket. Feeling a trace of warm energy seeping into his palm, he focused his mind on drawing the energy out of the crystal. When the energy entered his body, it circled his whole body once before ending in his head. The moment the energy was absorbed by his body, he felt something changing, but he couldn't pinpoint what it was. After a few minutes, the crystal core in his palm turned into fine dust. Chapter 132, Mental Breakdown. Feeling his headache lessen, Feng Yun continued to absorb another crystal. This time, he tried to guide the energy in his body and was surprised to find that he was able to do it. Every place the energy passed through was no longer as sore as before. Before he could soothe the soreness of his muscles and joints, the crystal turned into dust. After experiencing the refreshing feeling of absorbing the energy, he no longer hesitated. When the fourth crystal turned into fine dust, he finally felt that the emptiness in his body caused by the lack of energy had been filled. Standing on the wall, he created another space crack. Woomum. Crash. Learning from his experience, he aimed his skill far away from the wall. Since he still didn't know how to completely control it, he only created a bean-sized space crack that lasted for a second. Even at a smaller size, he could only use his skill 6 times before draining all of his ability energy. Seeing that he was absorbing crystal cores again, Zyrokai said, "Brother, how about you kill the zombies using a boulder like me? Even if your attack is ruthless and fast, it uses too many crystals." "Do these crystals have any other use?" Feng Yun asked curiously while absorbing the crystal. Zyrokai shook his head and replied, "So far, we only know that these crystals can help us recover our energy and increase our ability level. But judging from our situation, money won't have any value anymore, and we might have to use barter in the future. These crystals are not easy to get, as not every zombie has one, so we might be able to use them to exchange for supplies in the future." Hearing his words, Feng Yun found it made sense, so after absorbing 2 more crystals, he stopped and chose to kill the zombies using a big boulder. This time, he didn't feel any space fluctuation, but noticed that his focus and concentration slowly decreased as he collected and took out the boulder. It was as if he was staying up late and overusing his brain. While the Phantom team was fighting against the zombies, the Eagle team successfully left the factory district. As they drove in the opposite direction, the soldiers sitting on the bus rooftop saw colorful lights flashing from the factory's direction, and everyone could feel the ground shake following the sound of explosions in the distance. At this moment, the survivors squeezing inside the buses and trucks only felt fortunate that they had survived the calamity. Most of them felt guilty as they thought about those who stayed behind to ensure their escape, while at the same time feeling helpless and suffocated due to their inability to help the soldiers kill the zombies. Even Aunt Wang, who believed it was the soldiers' duty to protect them, was lost in her thoughts and her fear after brushing so close to death. Out of everyone, only Situbani stood in the corner, looking at the rising sun in a daze. After her mental attack against Zhao Lijai failed and her energy was absorbed instead, she only had the intelligence of a 3-year-old child after waking up. At the front of the fleet, the modified car hit the wandering zombies blocking the road. During their stay in the Phantom team's camp, the Wen brothers had helped them reinforce their cars. Even though their cars were not armored vehicles like those owned by the Phantom team, with the addition of metal planks and metal barbs, their cars' defenses and attack ability increased, allowing them to crush the zombies without a problem. Behind them, the buses and trucks filled with survivors and Pei Yijin's team followed closely. In the middle of the fleet, 4 military trucks carried supplies given by the Phantom team. At the rear of the fleet were 2 military cars, where Wei Wying and the newly joined soldiers sat. Sitting inside one of the military cars, the ex-members of the Phantom team sat with their heads lowered. When they left, they saw the number of zombies. Staying behind meant they were ready to die. They had thought of staying and fighting alongside their captain, but before they could voice their intentions, Zhang Yuan gave them his last order as vice-captain, to join the Eagle team and survive. Under his order, they could only leave with heavy hearts. Noticing their moods, Wei Wying wanted to comfort them, but he didn't know what to say. In the end, he let out a long sigh but said nothing. When everyone thought that the Phantom team had sacrificed their lives to allow them to escape, Jin Zuyan and his team were harvesting crystal cores. After almost 2 hours of fighting, most of them had run out of energy. Besides Li Sikai and Yun Yusheng, who hadn't awakened their abilities, the one in the worst condition was Zyrokai. Due to his overuse of space, he was having a mental breakdown. Unlike other ability users, he couldn't recover his energy by absorbing crystal cores. At this moment, he was sitting on top of the wall, crying while eating chocolate. As he chewed the chocolate with teary eyes, he looked at Feng Yun and asked hoarsely, "Brother Feng Yun, tell me, why do I feel so tired, sad, and stressed?" Feng Yun, who also felt the overwhelming negative emotions hitting him stronger the more he used the big boulder to smash zombies, said, "I don't know." "Don't you feel depressed too?" Zyrokai asked again. After confirming his guess, Feng Yun stopped using his space and took a rest. Sitting beside Zyrokai, he drank the water given by Zhao Lijai before saying, "I think the negative emotions you are experiencing now are due to overusing your space." Hearing this, Zyrokai pointed at his brothers and asked, "Why don't they feel depressed? Why is it only me?" As soon as he finished speaking, He opened his mouth and bawled his eyes out. Chapter 133, Energy Transfer 1. Feng Yun looked at Zyro Kai, who was crying, with amusement in his eyes, and said, "If my guesses are correct, there are 2 types of energy used by ability users." Wiping his tears, Zyro Kai asked curiously, "What energy?" After finishing the water, Feng Yun felt the overwhelming negative emotions in his mind lessen. He pointed at the soldiers and replied, "The energy they use and the energy we use to control our space are different." "How do you know?" Zyro Kai asked again. Feng Yun thought for a while before explaining, "When I create a space crack, my body feels pain, and I get severe headaches after using up my energy, but my mind is clear, and my emotions are stable. The energy absorbed from the crystals can recover the lost energy and lessen the pain. But when I use the boulder to smash the zombies, my body feels nothing. However, overusing space to take out and collect the boulder makes my mind clouded, and negative thoughts surge into my head. From what I know, thoughts and the mind are connected to mental health. If we use that as a basis, then accessing space must be consuming our mental energy. Meanwhile, using our space ability to create the space crack consumes our ability energy. That's why our bodies are fine, but our minds are affected when we overuse our spaces." After hearing his explanation, Zyro Kai looked at him and said in disbelief, "According to your words, don't we turn into idiots if we keep using our spaces?" Feng Yun chuckled at his words and shook his head as he said, "I have no idea, but after draining my energy and recovering it, I can feel that something is expanding inside my body. The second time I absorbed energy, I needed more crystals than the first time. Perhaps the amount of energy our bodies can store increases each time we drain and recover it. Maybe overusing our space will not affect us in a bad way. Who knows, we might even gain something unexpectedly from continuing to overuse our space," he added with a smile. While the 2 of them were chatting, the soldiers, Jin Zuyin and Zhao Lijai, were paying attention to their discussions. When Jin Zuyin and Zhao Lijai heard Feng Yun's words, they were surprised. They knew all of that information regarding space-type ability because they had lived in the apocalypse for years. But for Feng Yun, today was only the 8th day of the apocalypse, and he had only just awakened his space-type ability. Yet, he had drawn this conclusion in just a few days. Just based on his observation skills, he would be able to survive in the apocalypse for a long time. After another 30 minutes, the soldiers finally couldn't hold on anymore. Even if they continued absorbing the crystal cores, their stamina was still depleted after using their skills non-stop for more than 2 hours. It wasn't that their energy was running out, but their hands and arms were sore. To use and aim their abilities, they needed to wave and raise their arms. If it was for a short period, they wouldn't feel anything, but waving their arms for 2 hours was too much even for trained soldiers. Qin Luzi checked the red dots in his mind and said, "Captain, the number of zombies has been reduced by 1/3. When everyone heard this, they couldn't help but take a sharp breath. They had killed so many zombies, yet the number had only been reduced by 1/3. From this alone, they could guess that the number of zombies was more than 30,000, if not more. Seeing their exhaustion, Jin Zuyin said, "Take a break. Eat and drink to recover your stamina." Hearing this, Zhang Yuan said, "Captain, we will take turns." "No need, just rest. Aitg and I can handle it." After he finished speaking, he jumped from the wall and swung his longsword. Boom! A huge energy blade covered in black flames flew toward the zombies and exploded upon contact. The black flames burned the zombie corpses on the ground and created a huge empty area. The moment he landed on the ground, he dashed toward the remaining zombies. Seeing this, Zhao Lijai gripped her dagger and jumped from the wall, following him without hesitation. When she landed, she quickly rushed toward the zombies. Zra! Crack! With her dagger covered in a thin water blade, she slashed a zombie that pounced at her in half. Before the black blood splattered onto her, she turned to the side and stabbed her dagger into another zombie's head. Zra! Noticing several zombies pouncing at her from 3 directions, she gripped her dagger, kicked one zombie, and pulled out her dagger. Using the force from the kick, she jumped and flipped in the air. Stab, stab, stab! While mid-air, she waved her hand, and several ice needles flew toward the zombies, piercing their skulls. After killing several zombies, she saw 4 zombies pouncing at Jin Zuyin from behind. With a flick of her wrist, the ice needles flow out from the zombies' heads. With another flick of her wrist, the ice needles flew toward the zombies behind Jin Zuyin. Stab, stab, stab! Turning his head, Jin Zuyan saw Zhao Lijai staring at him with a frown. He smiled apologetically when he realized she was angry. Fearing that she would ignore him later, he jumped back, dodging the zombie's claws, and stood 2 meters away from her. Looking at her, he said, "Aitg, don't be angry, I will be more careful." Zhao Lijai was too busy killing zombies to respond. Even though she absorbed crystal cores and drank her pond water, her energy recovery couldn't keep up with its usage. The reason she was able to hold on for so long was thanks to her absorption skill. When he saw the thin layer of sweat on her forehead and her pale lips, Jin Zuyan waved his hand. Boom! Chapter 134, Energy Transfer 2. A black fireball flew at a fast speed and burned a group of zombies nearby. Taking advantage of the opening, Jin Zuyan rushed to her side and held her left hand. Feeling the pull on her hand, Zhao Lijai looked at him and asked with disbelief, "Brother Yan, what are you doing? Let me go." Just after she finished speaking, she felt a surge of warm energy entering her body. The throbbing headache from overusing her energy lessened with the energy flow. Realizing that he was transferring his energy to her, her eyes widened in shock. The energy transfer skill was unique to healing-type ability users since their energy was gentle and had no property. As for other types of ability users, they could only transfer their energy to the same type of ability users. Water-type and fire-type abilities constrained each other. Not to mention transferring energy to each other, it was even difficult for them to conceive a child. Therefore, when she realized that Jin Zuyan was able to transfer his energy to her, Zhao Lijai's shock couldn't be described in words. Boom! Another fireball struck the zombies that pounced on them, burning them into black ashes. "Aitg, don't think too much. Use your ability to attack," Jin Zuyan said. The next moment, black flames ignited and burned fiercely, turning the zombies into a pile of black ashes. Although he could kill the zombies quickly, the energy being absorbed by his body was too much. Therefore, he didn't dare to kill too fast, fearing that his body wouldn't be able to handle it and might explode from overabsorption. The more his black flames burned the zombies, the more cold energy entered his body. As he refined the energy, he sent the warm energy into Zhao Lijai's body. Feeling her energy recover faster than when she absorbed crystal cores, Zhao Lijai looked at him with concern. Only when she saw that he was fine did she refocus her mind on the battle. With Jin Zuyan taking care of one side, Zhao Lijai only needed to handle the other. With energy supplied by him, she didn't hold back and summoned several water blades. Wash tilde crack, crack, crack. With a flick of her wrist, the water blades flew at high speed toward the zombies' necks. The water blades spun rapidly and sliced through the rotting flesh as if it were butter. While the two of them fought below, the Phantom team members sat on top of the wall, eating and drinking the pond water. They watched the fire burning and water splashing below with excitement. After resting for a long time and eating a lot of chocolate, Zyrokai's mental energy had already recovered by half, and he was no longer having a mental breakdown. Sitting beside Chin Luzi, he asked hoarsely, "Brother Luzi, can you guess what level our captain is now?" After finishing a bottle of pond water, Chin Luzi looked at the deep blue dots in his mind and said, "I don't know." "Judging from our captain's power, he should be at least level 3, Zhang Yuan said after thinking for a moment. "Vice Captain, do you know the power of level 3 ability users?" Shen Jinj asked. "No, but we fought against a level 3 zombie and a level 2 mutated zombie before. The difference in strength between a level 2 and a level 3 zombie is huge. Our captain can kill a level 2 zombie by himself, so he should be stronger than level 2, Zhang Yuan said. Recalling their fight in the gas station, the soldiers nodded at his words, finding that it made sense. After an hour, the soldiers jumped down from the wall and joined their captain and sister-in-law to clear the zombies. When the sun rose above their heads, they finally killed the last zombies. With Jin Zuyan's black flame burning the zombies' corpses into black ashes, only the crystal cores left behind, glistening on the ground. Since Zhao Lijai didn't want to let others know about her space, Jin Zuyan looked at Zyrokai and said, "Zyrokai, collect the crystal cores." "Yes, Captain." While Zyrokai went to collect the crystals, Jin Zuyan looked at Wenmo without his captain telling him what to do. He raised his hands and turned the first layer of the metal wall into bunches of metal bullets. Seeing this, Feng Yun asked, "Brother Wenmo, can you give me the metal bullets?" Since he could make more and he had no place to store these metal bullets, Wenmo was generous and said, "Sure." Feng Yun thanked him and collected the metal bullets into his space. He had a new idea of how to use his space to attack when he saw these metal bullets. While he was thinking about how to utilize his idea, Qin Luzi checked the survivors and saw several white dots flickering on the map in his mind. He looked at Jin Zuyan and said, "Captain, there are 9 people mutating." The moment he said this, the survivors looked at the people near them with fear. "Check on their conditions," Jin Zuyan said. Qin Luzi walked toward the survivors, followed by Gao Bohai and Shen Jinj. When the survivors saw them approaching, they stared at them. No one dared to move, fearing they would be killed. Qin Luzi pointed at several people and said, 4 of them almost turned into zombies. The moment he said these words, Shen Jinj pulled out his dagger and stabbed it toward a man beside him. Stab! His dagger pierced the man's wide mouth, going through his skull. When he pulled back his dagger, dark red blood spurted out. Before the dark red blood splashed on his body, he kicked the zombie away. Seeing him kill one of them, the survivors let out a scream. As the zombie's corpse fell to the ground with a thud, they realized the man's flesh was rotten, and his mouth was split in half with rows of sharp teeth inside. Chapter 135, An Example. Qin Luzi looked at the survivors with annoyance and said coldly, "If you let out another scream, I will throw you to the zombies." After experiencing the horror of being chased by zombies, everyone understood that their screams attracted them. So, after hearing the warning, no one dared to make a sound. Soon after Shen Jinj killed one of the mutating survivors, Gao Bohai had already tied up the rest. Out of 8 people, 2 had already lost their minds and completely turned into zombies, while another still had some consciousness left. She looked at Gao Bohai and pleaded hoarsely, "Kill me, please." Looking into her dull white eyes, Gao Bohai sighed and said, "Farewell, comrade." As his words fell, his dagger plunged into the woman's forehead, killing her instantly. Everyone watched with mixed emotions. Those zombies were once their colleagues, but now they were killed as monsters. Shen Jinj burned the corpses with his blue flame after killing the zombies. As for the 5 wounded survivors, Gao Bohai checked on them and said, "Captain, they have a high fever and didn't show any mutation signs." Jin Zuyan nodded and said, "Feed them medicine and water. Check on their condition every 10 minutes. Understood. Then, he looked at the rest of the survivors and said, "We will give you supplies and water. The road ahead has been cleared of zombies, so you can leave." When they heard this, they were unwilling to leave. Even though they didn't see how this group of soldiers killed the zombies, they knew for sure that this group was very strong. If they followed this group, they wouldn't have to worry about their safety. With this thought, a young man said, "Comrade, can I follow you? I promise I will do as you say." Jin Zuyan looked at them and saw that everyone had the same thought as the young man. He understood the responsibility and troubles of taking a group of civilians with him in his previous life. If he had to say it bluntly, protecting civilians was a thankless job. Not only did he receive no reward, but he also had to bear their complaints and scolding. He had already had enough of it in his previous life, so he had no plans to do it again in this one. With his hand in his pocket, he looked at the young man and said, "My team is not soldiers. We are mercenaries. We don't have any plans to recruit members. If you want us to protect you, you have to pay us." The moment the young man heard this, he pulled out his wallet and said, "Comrade, I only have 500 yuan. Raising his eyebrows, Jin Zuyan chuckled and said, "Comrade, you don't think money still has value, do you?" Hearing this, the young man asked, "What do you mean by that?" Jin Zuyan pointed at the pile of black ashes and said, "With zombies around, do you think people still accept that waste paper?" "If you don't want money, then what do you want?" the young man asked again. "Supplies or crystal cores," Jin Zuyan said. Crystal cores, the young man was confused. At that moment, Xirokai returned, handed 2 backpacks to him and said, "Captain, I have collected everything." Jin Zuyan nodded and took out a crystal core from the backpack. He showed it to the survivors and said, "This is a crystal core. You can get it from killing zombies. If you are lucky, the zombie you kill might have this crystal in its brain." When everyone heard his words, they were devastated. How could they obtain the so-called crystal cores if they couldn't even kill zombies? Jin Zuyan handed all the crystal cores to Zhao Lijai before adding, "Since you don't have any supplies or crystal cores, you can't join my team." "What if we insist on following you?" one of the survivors asked stubbornly. When Jin Zuyan heard this, he chuckled and replied nonchalantly, We can't stop you if you want to follow us, but we won't protect you or wait for you. If you can keep up with my team, then you are free to do so. But if you choose to leave, we will give you some supplies and a dagger. Whether you survive in the apocalypse or become food for the zombies will depend on yourself." As soon as he finished his words, Wenmo raised his hands and turned the metal wall behind the survivors into a lump of metal. Afterward, he turned the metal into a pile of daggers. The blades gleamed under the sunlight, showcasing their sharpness. When he was done, Feng Yun and Zyro Kai consulted with Zhang Yuan before taking out enough food and water from their spaces to last the survivors a week. Looking at the pile of food, water, and daggers, the survivors hesitated. After a while, the young man finally stood up and said, "Comrade, please give me the supplies and a dagger." Hearing this, Jin Zuyin gave Zyro Kai and Feng Yun a nod. With his permission, Feng Yun handed the supplies to the young man, while Zyro Kai gave him a dagger. Since the young man had no bag, he could only use his t-shirt as a temporary back and use it to hold his supplies. When he got his supplies, he thanked them and left. With someone setting an example, the rest of the survivors followed suit one after another. An hour later, the survivors had already gotten their supplies and left. After they left, a woman walked over to Jin Zuyin and asked, "Comrade, can I stay with my brother?" Pointing at one of the men tied by the soldiers, she said, "That's my brother." Since she was his family, Jin Zuyin had no objection and said, "You can stay. When your brother wakes up, you will leave with him." "Thank you," the woman bowed to him. Jin Zuyin nodded and walked toward Zhao Lijai. He took the backpacks from her and asked, "Aitg, are you hungry?" Chapter 136, We Are Rich, 1. After fighting from morning till noon, Zhao Lijai felt as if her back and front had already become one. She was tired, hungry, and thirsty. So when she heard Jin Zuyin's question, she nodded and said, "Brother Yan, I'm tired. I don't want to move anymore." Jin Zuyin smiled and turned his back to her. As he squatted in front of her, he said, "Come up, I will carry you back." Zhao Lijai had no concern about face or reputation. Without hesitation, she climbed onto his back and leaned her head on his shoulder. After she lay on his back, Jin Zuyin transferred his energy to her so her tiredness would lessen. The Phantom team members were already used to seeing their captain spoiling his girlfriend over the past few days, so they no longer reacted to their PDA. Some of them carried the survivors who had fainted due to high fever, while the rest checked the road for any crystal cores left behind. After they returned to the camp, they started cleaning up the mess. They took showers and changed into clean clothes. While Qin Luzi, Feng Yun, Li Sikai, and Zyro Kai went to cook lunch, the rest of the soldiers washed their dirty clothes. As for the room created by Zhang Yuan and Zhou Huajian, it was used as their temporary residence. Inside the room, Gao Bohai was monitoring the survivors' conditions. After feeding them fever medicine and some jelly, he gave them water every 15 minutes. At the same time, Zhao Lijai went to take a shower. While washing her hair, she noticed it was longer than before. Her hair had already grown past her shoulders. It seemed like it would reach her waist in no time. Thinking about the trouble of washing it made her let out a long sigh. It took her half an hour to wash her hair and scrub the rancid smell from her body. When she came out, she saw the woman leaning against the wall. Seeing Zhao Lijai come out, the woman walked over and asked, "Sister, do you have spare underwear?" Zhao Lijai looked at the woman's dirty clothes and said, "Wait here." She went to her car and took out a t-shirt, pants, and a set of women's underwear from her space. Thinking about the inconvenience of not having a bag, she checked the boxes she had collected from the clothing factory and found some bags inside. She took out a sling bag and placed the clothes inside. Then she added a bottle of shampoo, 2 bars of soap, a bottle of sanitizer, 2 packs of sanitary pads, and 2 menstrual cups. As a woman, she knew the risk of illness was higher compared to men during certain times if hygiene wasn't properly maintained. After adding a strip of pain relief medicine, she zipped the bag and walked back to the public bathhouse. Seeing the woman squatting there, she walked over and handed her the bag. "After you take a shower, you can wash your clothes inside." The woman accepted the bag and said, "Thank you, sister." Zhao Lijai nodded and walked back to her car. After she stored the crystal cores they obtained into her space, she went to a shaded area. She sat on a boulder and closed her eyes. Using her mind, she checked on the seeds she had obtained. Since 100 square meters of black soil hadn't been used, she decided to plant all the mutated fruits. mutated plants, and mutated trees. There were a total of 98 mutated fruit trees, 21 mutated strawberry bushes, 6 mutated nuts trees, and 3 mutated coffee plants. When she finished planting, she opened the space settings and checked the oxygen level in her space. The grassland increased the oxygen level to 20%, and the crops added 10%. After planting the mutated fruits, trees, and plants, the oxygen level reached 60%. She checked the new information regarding the oxygen level. With a minimum requirement of 30%, she could raise one animal per 5% of the oxygen level. With her current 60% oxygen level, she could raise 60 animals at the maximum. After gaining a better understanding of her space, she couldn't help but feel grateful for obtaining it. Now, she only needed to find mutated or normal animals to raise in her space. In the future, she wouldn't have to worry about running out of meat. With her mood improved, she continued organizing the supplies in her space. She divided them by type and stacked them neatly in a corner of the grassland. This way, she would know how much space was left for storage. Afterward, she checked her granary and saw that the amount had increased a little compared to before. Feeling satisfied with the results, she started filling the empty bottles with pond water. When she was done, she divided the crystal cores by type and placed them inside separate boxes. Besides the transparent crystal cores and element-type crystal cores, she was surprised to find mutated-type crystal cores. The lightning-type crystal core was silver, the wind-type crystal core was transparent with silver lines, and the ice-type crystal core was blue with silver lines. Although the number of mutated crystal cores was not large, she was delighted with the unexpected gain. Compared to normal ability-type cores, mutated-type cores were rarer. Looking at several boxes of crystal cores, she felt more confident. If they had to face a zombie horde again, they could absorb crystal cores according to their ability types instead of relying on the transparent ones. The transparent crystal cores would be saved as currency in the future. While she was busy organizing her space, the soldiers finished washing their clothes and built a rack to dry them. Then, they helped prepare lunch. After the woman took a shower and changed into a clean set of clothes, she went to the room. Seeing Gao Bohai feeding her brother water, she walked over and said, "Comrade, let me do it." Chapter 137, We Are Rich, 2. Hearing the woman's voice, Gao Bohai handed her the water bottle and said, "Remember to give them water every 15 minutes and check their temperature every half hour. If their temperature rises, inform me immediately." The woman nodded and said, "Okay." After leaving the room, Gao Bohai took a shower and washed his clothes. By the time he finished, lunch was ready. Since everyone was tired, they decided to cook instant noodles. They added some dried vegetables, dumplings, eggs, and sausage. Due to their increased appetites, they had to cook 2 big pots of noodles for everyone. Jin Zuyan saw that lunch was ready and went to call Zhao Lijai. When he found her, he thought she was sleeping. Only when he walked closer did he hear her giggling and mumbling softly. He squatted in front of her and asked, "Zhai, are you awake?" Hearing his voice, Zhao Lijai opened her eyes and said with a bright smile, "Brother Yan, we are rich." Raising his eyebrows, Jin Zuyan asked, "Did we find treasure?" Zhao Lijai nodded and said, "Brother Yan, I organized the crystal cores. Thanks to the zombie horde, we have more than 26,000 level 1 crystal cores and 434 level 2 crystal cores." Hearing this, Jin Zuyan was taken aback. "We have that many?" he asked. Zhao Lijai nodded and replied, "That includes the ones we obtained before." Seeing how happy she was, Jin Zuyan rubbed her head and said, "We will get more tomorrow." Thinking about the supplies in the seed factory, Zhao Lijai nodded and said, "It's a pity that the Eagle team had to leave first and couldn't get their share." Jin Zuyan smiled and said, "It couldn't be helped. We weren't sure how many zombies we would face or if we could even survive. The best course of action was for them to leave first." Before they left, Zhang Yuan gave them 4 trucks of supplies. With Pei Yijin's team and some of our members joining them, they will be able to find more supplies and won't lack water. As for the supplies in the factories, we will share them with the survivors trapped there. After hearing his words, Zhao Lijai nodded and said, "Good, we will do as you say." "Lunch is ready, let's go eat first," Jin Zuyan said, holding her hand as he pulled her up. While everyone was eating, Zyro Kai scooped a bowl of noodles and grabbed a bottle of water before walking to the room. He placed the noodles and water on the table and said, "Sister, you go eat first. I will take care of them." The woman nodded and said, "Thank you." Zyro Kai sat beside the unconscious men and asked, "Sister, I'm Zyrokai, what's your name?" After drinking some water, the woman smiled and replied, "My name is Jian Huan, Huan as in lustrous." Then she pointed at her brother and said, "This is my younger brother, Jian Zikin, Jai as Katalpa and Chin as Zither." Looking at the siblings, Zyrokai said, "Sister Jian, your brother looks so young. Were both of you working in the factory?" Jian Huan shook her head and said, "My brother is a university student. He came to visit me when the zombies appeared. We both panicked and hid in my dormitory room. Fortunately, my brother had brought some food, and I had stocked up some water, so we were able to hold out for a long time. We just never expected that when we left the factory, others would come out too. We told them not to scream, but no one listened. After a while, more zombies gathered, and well, you know the rest." Zyrokai thought about the number of zombies that had chased after the survivors and shuddered. If he had been in their position before awakening his ability, he might not have survived, even as a trained soldier. This thought flashed through his mind as he looked at Jian Huan and the others with a trace of admiration. It wasn't easy for them to have survived the calamity. After Jian Huan finished her noodles and water, Zyrokai took away the empty bowl but left the bottle. Before leaving, he said, "Sister Jian, the bottle is for you. Later, we will help you fill it again." Jian Huan nodded and said, "Thank you." When Zyrokai returned, most of the noodles had already been eaten. Seeing the nearly empty pots, he quickly grabbed his bowl and started eating. Sitting across from him, Chin Luzi asked, "What information did you get?" Zyrokai swallowed his food and replied, "Brother Luzi, I only know their names and occupations. The woman's name is Jian Huan, and her brother is Jian Zikin. He is a university student, and she is a factory worker." When the apocalypse began, the two of them hid in the dormitory, but when they decided to leave, the other survivors' screams attracted zombies. Hearing his words, Zhao Lijai glanced at the room and fell silent. Stories like this were common in the apocalypse. Most survivors had similar experiences, but that woman was too calm. Also, her name sounded familiar. Jin Zuyin noticed her gaze and said, "Don't worry about them. That woman and her brother can be trusted." The moment she heard this, Zhao Lijai looked at him. Seeing his smile, she finally remembered where she had heard that woman's name. Jian Huan was one of the Phantom Team's members, but in her previous life, she didn't have a brother. Thinking about their situation just now, it seemed that her brother had died in their previous life. No wonder she hadn't remembered the name Jian Zikin. Now that she had a full stomach, her mind was more active. As she rested, memories from her previous life surfaced. In her previous life, Jian Huan had been the only woman close to Jin Zuyin, and many people had believed she was his girlfriend. Now that they had met again in this life, would they end up together? Chapter 138, Deep Kiss. Knowing that Jin Zuyin has the memories of his past life, Zhao Lijai wanted to ask him about Jian Huan, but after hesitating for a long time, she decided not to ask. Noticing her gaze, Jin Zuyin said, "Zhai, if there is something you want to know, just ask." Feeling uncomfortable, Zhao Lijai thought she was tired, so she stood up and said, "Brother Yan, I'm going to rest." Leaving those words behind, she walked to her car and climbed into the back seat. She didn't close the door and simply lay down, taking a nap. Jin Zuyin watched her walking away with a frown. He had clearly noticed that something was on her mind, so why wouldn't she say anything? Feeling uneasy, he walked over to the car to ask her, but when he saw her sleeping, he couldn't bring himself to wake her. So he climbed into the car and used his lap as a pillow. He placed her head on his lap and caressed her cheek. As he watched her sleep, he played with her hair. He liked her hair, it was smooth and smelled good. When it grew longer, it would feel even better between his fingers. Once asleep, Zhao Lijai slept until the next morning. When she turned her body, her nose bumped into something hard but warm. For a moment, she thought she was sleeping on a soft bed and reached out to touch the wall. When her palm touched the warm wall, she felt it seemed to be growing and squeezed it with a frown. Hiss! The moment she heard the sharp hissing, her eyes opened wide instantly. When her gaze landed on where her hand was squeezing, she felt her mind explode. It took her a while before she let go of her hand and sat up in panic. Leaning on the seat, Jin Zuyin watched her with his half-closed eyes, amusement flashing in them. He smiled lazily and asked hoarsely, "Zhai, are you satisfied with it?" Zhao Lijai's eyes widened when she heard his words and asked, "Brother Yan, what are you talking about? It was an accident." Raising his eyebrows, Jin Zuyin stared at her and said, "Zhai, you touched it for a long time but still call it an accident." Do you want to touch it longer to check more carefully? Looking at her flushed cheeks, neck, and ears, he leaned closer. As he moved forward, Zhao Lijai backed away. Without noticing, she was cornered, her back pressing against the door. Jolted back to her senses, she said, Brother Yan, I really didn't mean to offend you. I don't even know how I ended up sleeping on your lap. Hearing her denial, Jin Zuyan lowered his gaze and asked aggrievedly, Aitg, did I do something to make you angry? No, Zhao Lijai shook her head. Then why are you distancing yourself from me? I thought after sharing a kiss and killing zombies together, we were already in a relationship. It seems that was just my wishful thinking, Jin Zuyan said sadly. Seeing how sad he was, Zhao Lijai felt as if she was a scum girl. She knew she shouldn't give him all her trust when they had only reunited not long ago, but for some reason, she couldn't bring herself to harden her heart and reject him. After hesitating for a long time, she finally reached out to brush away the hair covering his eyes and said, Brother Yan, I'm not sure about my feelings toward you. Although we were childhood friends, we only met again after so many years. The current me is different from the past me. You might want to take some time to think about it before making your decision. What's more, don't you want to get back with your girlfriend? She added softly, lowering her gaze. Hearing her words, Jin Zuyan frowned and asked, Aitg, what do you mean by getting back with my girlfriend? Zhao Lijai clenched her fists and replied, Weren't you and Jian Huan a couple in the past? When he heard her words, Jin Zuyan realized she was talking about their previous life. He cupped her face and stared into her eyes. The moment he saw the flickering emotions in her gaze, his anxious heart finally settled. He was sure his Aitg was jealous, and it delighted him. Instead of feeling angry or wronged, he was feeling so happy that he almost couldn't stop himself from laughing out loud. After a while he let out a chuckle and said, Silly girl, who told you that? She is just a member of my team. If you dislike her, we will send her away when her brother wakes up. Aitg, I have never had a girlfriend. You are my first and will be my last. Besides you, I don't want anyone else. I'm sure of my feelings toward you. So Aitg, can you please trust me and give me a chance? He asked. Zhao Lijai's heart skipped a beat when she heard his words. After a moment, she finally asked, Brother Yan, are you and Jian Huan really not in a relationship? This time, Jin Zuyan didn't explain with words. He lowered his head, and the moment their lips met, he used his actions to prove his feelings. His kiss was gentle yet domineering. He licked and bit her lips lightly. When Zhao Lijai parted her lips to take a breath, his tongue slipped into her mouth, not giving her a chance to resist. The moment he entered the warm mouth, he pulled at her tongue, entwining with it. He deepened the kiss, brushing his tongue against her gums and teeth. Feeling her soft body become even softer in his embrace, his gaze darkened, and his body throbbed with desire. Zhao Lijai was overwhelmed by the intensity of the kiss, and couldn't help but pull back to catch her breath. When he felt her retreating, Jin Zuyan placed his palm on her nape and pulled her closer. Fearing he might crush her with his weight, he placed his left hand on the window to support himself. Chapter 139, Shadow-type Ability. Zhao Lijai felt dizzy from the kiss. It was as if her breath had been taken away as his soft, nimble tongue plundered her mouth wildly. After a long time, Jin Zuyan finally let her go, reluctantly. He lowered his gaze and saw her gasping for breath. Her cheeks flushed and her teary eyes were covered with a layer of mist. When he saw her wet, swollen lips, he couldn't help but lean down and give her another kiss. Outside the car, Zyro Kai saw his captain's palm pressing against the window and how the car moved slightly. He felt his blood rush to his head as images unsuitable for children flashed through his mind. After a moment, he finally decided not to disturb his captain's good time and walked back to the camp. When Zhang Yuan saw him return in a daze, he asked, Zyro Kai, did you ask the captain about his next plan? Zyro Kai sat on a boulder without saying a word. Sensing that something was off, Zhang Yuan patted his shoulder and asked again, Zyro Kai, what are you thinking about? Startled by the pat, Zyro Kai came back to his senses and raised his head. When he met his vice-captain's gaze, he said, Vice-captain, I didn't ask. Why did you ask? Zhang Yuan asked with a frown. That captain is busy. When Zhang Yuan heard this, he checked his watch and said, It's not even 7 o'clock yet. What could the captain? Before he could finish his words, realization dawned on him. He looked at Zyro Kai's reddened ears and immediately understood what his captain was busy with. Feeling awkward, he coughed and said, Since the captain is busy, we will ask him later. After saying this, Zhang Yuan went to wake the rest of the team. While they washed up and prepared breakfast, Jin Zuyin and Zhao Lijai finally stepped out of the car. The soldiers noticed her flushed cheeks and swollen lips. To avoid embarrassing her, they pretended not to see anything but scolded their captain in their hearts. They were still outside, yet the captain didn't hold back and did that in the car. He should think more about the girl. How can he just do it anywhere? Even though the soldiers treated Zhao Lijai as usual, they glared at their captain, leaving Jin Zuyin confused. While they were having breakfast, Jian Huan came out of the room with joy clear in her voice. "Comrade, my brother has woken up." Hearing this, Gao Bohai finished his porridge in several gulps and went to the room. The moment he entered, his eyes flashed with surprise. Standing before him, a young man was looking at another person with a pale face. When he saw his sister return, Jian Zikin asked, "Sister, am I going to die?" Jian Huan quickly walked over and said, "You are not going to die." Gao Bohai noticed the person standing beside the young man was actually a shadow in the shape of a person. He walked closer to inspect it and found that it had the exact features as Jian Zikin. Lowering his gaze, he noticed a thin shadow connecting Jian Zikin to the figure. Squatting down, he took a small flashlight from his pocket and turned it on. The moment he aimed the light at the shadow connecting them, the shadow person disappeared. When he turned off the flashlight, it reappeared. After testing several times, he was sure that this shadow figure was Jian Zikin's ability. Standing up, he pocketed his flashlight and said, "Don't worry, this is your ability." Then he took a thermometer and checked Jian Zikin's temperature. He nodded and said, 37.1 degrees. "You are fine now. My team is having breakfast. Both of you should go eat something first." At the mention of breakfast, Jian Zikin's stomach growled. He was so hungry after he woke up that he felt like he could eat a cow. He rubbed his stomach and licked his lips. Noticing her brother's small movements, Jian Huan nodded and left the room with him. Even if she felt embarrassed, she had to put her pride aside for his sake. Seeing the soldiers eating, she walked over and asked, "Comrade, can I have a bowl of porridge for my brother?" Zhao Lijai turned to look at her and said, "Take a seat." Zyro Kai took 2 bowls and filled them with egg porridge. Then he handed them over and said, "Sister Jian, if you want water, just use the boiled water in that pot." "Thank you," Jian Huan said before going to get some water for her brother. While the soldiers stared at the shadow person behind Jian Zikin, Jin Zuyin didn't even spare them a glance. Since his Aitg was jealous, he wouldn't let them stay in his team. Even though the rumor about him and Jian Huan wasn't true in his previous life, there must have been a reason it spread in the first place. Rather than letting her stay and risk causing a rift between him and Aitg, it was better not to keep her around. Sitting across from Jian Zikin, Zhao Lijai was intrigued by his ability. She had heard of a rare ability user renowned for his assassination skills. No one knew who that person was or what their ability was. All that was known was that hiring him cost a fortune, and even with a high bounty, there was no guarantee he would take a mission. While she pondered the possibility that this young man was the renowned master, Jin Zuyin suddenly asked, "Aitg, is he that good-looking?" Noticing the sourness in his tone, Zhao Lijai was speechless. She looked at him and said perfunctorily, "Brother Yan, you are the most handsome." Unhappy with her casual response, Jin Zuyin glared at Jian Zikin and said, "After you finish breakfast, we will give you and your sister some supplies and weapons. Both of you can leave." At his words, the soldiers exchanged thoughtful glances. They had assumed he would let the Jian siblings stay due to Jian Zikin's unique ability. Unexpectedly, their captain stayed true to his word. He wouldn't let them stay. Chapter 140, Distributing Supplies, 1. Although Zhao Lijai was surprised by Jin Zuyin's decision, she found it understandable when she recalled their conversation in the car. Initially, Jian Huan had planned to stay, hoping to negotiate by using her brother's ability as leverage. Unexpectedly, before she could even speak, the captain had already shut down the possibility. Even though it was a pity, she knew that pestering them further would only make them dislike her, which might put her and her brother in danger. So she nodded and said with a smile, "Comrade, thank you for saving my brother and me. After we finish our meal, we will leave." After breakfast, the soldiers cleaned up, and Zhao Lijai went to her car. She took out 2 backpacks from her space and filled them with dried food, medicine, some candies, 2 sets of clean clothes, and several bottles of her pond water. She also put 50 crystal cores in the side pocket for them. Although the number of crystal cores she gave them was nothing compared to the ones she owned. It was more than enough for them to survive at the beginning of the apocalypse. She didn't give them more, just in case it would make them greedy and have bad intentions. After she zipped the backpacks, she walked toward Jian Huan and handed them over while saying, "I put some crystal cores in the side pocket for both of you. You can use them to increase your brother's ability level or exchange them for supplies." Jian Huan took the backpacks and said, "Thank you, sister. If we are fated to meet again, I will definitely return your life-saving grace." Zhao Lijai shook her head and said, "The ones saving your life are not me but the soldiers. I also don't need you to repay me. I only hope that you will lend a helping hand to the soldiers in the future." Hearing her words, Jian Huan nodded and said, "I will keep your words in mind. Sister, we are leaving." Zhao Lijai nodded and said, "Stay alive." After the Zhao siblings left, she walked toward Jin Zuyan and asked, "Brother Yan, are you letting them go just like that?" "This is the first time I have met someone who awakened a shadow-type ability. If you trained him, he would become a valuable asset to our team. What's more, what if they meet danger and Jian Huan dies?" Jin Zuyan looked at her and said, "With that ability, they should be able to survive even without my team." Then he leaned closer, looked into her eyes and added, "Aitg, I don't care about other people's lives and deaths. I only care about you. Rather than letting her stay and making you unhappy, it's better to send them away." Zhao Lijai met his gaze and saw a flash of madness in his eyes. They looked at each other for a while before she finally let out a sigh and said, "Since you have made up your mind, then I will listen to you." The moment he heard this, a smile appeared on Jin Zuyan's face. He gave her a peck on her lips before saying, "My Aitg alone is enough for me." "Captain, we are ready to go." Hearing Zhang Yuan's voice, Jin Zuyan straightened his back and said, "Aitg, we will go to the seed factory and get the rest of the supplies." "Okay." Since 4 survivors hadn't woken up yet, Gao Bohai stayed behind with Li Sikai and Yin Yunsheng. The rest of them left the camp in their armored cars. They used 2 armored cars since there were only 9 people in their team. Inside the car, Qin Luzi checked the area and saw that there were still white dots inside the factories. After they had cleaned up the zombie horde, he didn't see any red dots anymore. Even when they reached the seed factory, the area was clear. After they got out of the cars, Feng Yun stored the armored vehicles in his space before they entered the factory. As they walked to the warehouse, Qin Luzi said, "Captain, there are survivors in the surrounding buildings, but there are no zombies." Jin Zuyan nodded and asked, "How many of them?" Qin Luzi went silent for a moment before saying, "Around 100 to 200 people." "Ignore them for now, we will leave some supplies for them," Jin Zuyan said. With Wenmo around, they didn't have to melt the lock. With a flick of his wrist, the padlock unlocked and fell with a loud clang. Opening the door, Jin Zuyan said, "This area only has mushroom spores. Zyro Kai, Feng Yun, the 2 of you follow Zhang Yuan and check area G. There should be rice stored there." Hearing this, the soldiers nodded and continued to the next area. After they left, Zhao Lijai entered the warehouse and saw the spores. With Jin Zuyan guarding the door, she stored everything happily. It took her almost an hour to store all the mushroom spores in the warehouses into her space. When they finished, the 2 of them went to Area F, where the coarse grains were stored using her car. There were 8 buildings in the area, and each warehouse stored different seeds. Opening the doors, they found wheat, corn, millet, oats, sorghum, quinoa, brown rice, and rye. While they were collecting the coarse grains, the soldiers were busy collecting the rice. Since there were supplies inside Zyro Kai and Feng Yun's spaces, they only managed to store 3 out of 12 warehouses. After Feng Yun took out the military trucks, he collected more rice into his space. With 2 military trucks loaded, they managed to clear another warehouse. Looking at the remaining supplies, Zhang Yuan said, "We will wait for the captain's decision." "Okay." Not long after, they saw Jin Zuyan and Zhao Lijai walk over. "Are you done collecting the supplies?" Jin Zuyan asked. "Captain, we were only able to get 4 warehouses. There are 8 left," Zyro Kai replied.